What if I told you that your reputation is actually the biggest marketing asset you have? Joining me on today's program is David Freeman. He is an expert at all things networking, referrals. Just a brief background on our guest. David Freeman, JD, is founder of Lawyer Book Builder. This is probably one of the most famous coaching courses on business development out there. David is a former lawyer from New York. He's also a business development expert and two-time best-selling author who has trained and coached more than 10,000 attorneys at over 200 law firms nationwide or worldwide, globally. David was voted the #1 business development coach in the U.S. for many consecutive years, which led to his induction into the National Law Journal Hall of Fame. David and his team created the Lawyer Book Builder online course and group accountability system to share proven systems with a broader audience for a fraction of the cost of live coaching. As with all of our programs, this is not meant to solicit or promote or sell a service. This is about providing high value content on demand. And today we're going to be talking about referrals, reputation, and retention, the habits that make attorneys stand out. So David, welcome to the program today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. After 30 years of working with a lot of lawyers around the world, there were a lot of tips and tactics that I've been able to collect. And at this point in my career, I want to put them in a way that people can have access to them. And that's why I'm glad to be on this program, to be able to share some of the highlights from the program so that your members can be able to see some of the techniques that have worked to help people grow great books of business.
You've been super generous to prepare slides and really specific information for today's conversation. But before we get into that, the frameworks, all that good stuff that you prepared, I just want to know, what are the most common misconceptions attorneys have about building their book of business?
One of them is, I'll kind of call it that it's magic. I mean, hard is another way of saying it, but there's hard in the work effort. There's hard in the I can't do itness. And what I find is that if things are broken into small chunks, let's do the first thing. Let's identify who you want to get famous in front of. As you said, reputation. Okay, let's figure that out. Okay, now we know that. Now let's do the next step. What tools can you use to get known by these people? Okay, let's start building tool number 1, tool number 2. If it's done as a step-by-step process, just about any lawyer can make it happen. But there's this feeling that there are the natural rainmakers, and it's just such a challenge, and it's such magic. How did they do it? Usually it's kind of like the duck, on the surface it looks so calm, but underneath the legs are going furiously. The great rainmakers have really been able to figure out how to put the time and energy in to be able to build the solid foundation.
Do you think what percentage of an attorney's day should be dedicated to these frameworks that you're going to show us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question because sometimes it's, a daily thing. It could be a weekly thing. I certainly wouldn't go beyond weekly. But some of the best practices that I've seen is lawyers who would take, even if it's 15 minutes at the beginning of the day. And then what I've seen works really, really nicely is 15 minutes to, let's say, a half hour beginning of the day, and then some kind of a check-in at the end of the day. Because so much happens during the day that it's great to have a moment to be able to stop, reflect what happened, and be able to jump on opportunities that may have come up. If it's weekly, I've seen lawyers who will they'll put things in their calendar where, Friday morning from 9 to 9:30, I will focus on business development. And so having habits, it gets you there, and it's kind of like the consultant's answer. So I hate to do this, but the more that they can do it, the better.
I was going to the gym, right? Just even if you go 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw something about, you put in 130 hours to change your body for fitness. And about a year ago, I was doing a program for an AmLaw 10 firm, and the partner sponsor was presenting the program to the lawyers, and he said, look, I want to let you know, when half your day is spent doing business development and half your day is doing your practice, you've made it.
Oh, wow.
And you could just feel that whole what? Huh? Is that what it really is? And especially if we're going to look through the crystal ball right now and look at an AI-driven future, the doing of the legal work is going to be less important. The relationship building, the reputation building, that's going to be what's critical.
Excellent. The framework goes into 4 components, which we'll go over in a moment.
Yes.
Networking, amplifiers, being top of mind, and an accountability system, the guarantee reminder system. I'm just curious, like, how long did it take you to develop this framework, and what kind of inspired that?
Yeah, I laugh because there's 2 answers to that. One is, this is 30 years worth of accumulated knowledge that I have curated over the career, and I basically have taken the greatest hits of things that I've seen that has worked. In terms of packaging it into a process, probably took me about a year, and this was my blessing of COVID, is that I actually had some time where I wasn't traveling, and I was able to sit back and create something that I've been wanting to create. So it took me about a year to collect the information, organize it, and then present it in a format that was optimized for adult learning. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of the biggest issue, is we have no shortage of the ability to read books and so on, but how do we build systems, which is going to be the last slide that we talk about, approaches to be able to lock it in so we actually engage in that behavior.
Excellent.
So yeah, bit of a labor of love.
All right. Well, why don't we start with networking? My first question to you on networking is that, when I talk to attorneys, they oftentimes neglect certain groups of people who could eventually become clients or even referral sources. So can you take us through some of the different categories of people that all attorneys should keep on their radar?
Yeah, and this is something that, as you say, sometimes these sort of slip out of our memory. So you see, we've got the slide up here that says your networks. And let's first talk about, on this side, the bucket of people that live inside your firm. So if you are more than a solo practitioner and you have other lawyers in the firm, then we need to look at people who are in here. So in the internal bucket, let's break this out. You've got other lawyers in the firm that may have other practices than yours, and you can co-market together to be able to cross-sell. If you break that out, let's say you're in a larger firm, lawyers in other practices, maybe you have new laterals that have joined the firm. And I've worked with firms of all sizes, the AmLaw 10 to solo practitioners. And in the larger firms, when they get new laterals come in, there's usually a little bit of fanfare, and then that person is forgotten. So that's a network that exists. So your own practice group, other practice groups, and then if you're in a large enough firm where you've got other offices, then these are lawyers. There's a firm, I'm doing a retreat later this month, and they're flying in the partners from all over the world. And the lawyers that I'm coaching, we're talking about how do you maximize this conference? Because there are lawyers coming from your own practice, but in other offices that you don't see, cross practices in other jurisdictions, new laterals that have shown up. The potential for work is gigantic, but we often don't really tap into it as deeply as we can. Then there's also the professionals and staff. Again, depending on your firm and your practice, if you're in a firm that's large enough to have someone who is involved in marketing and business development, it's their job to make the lawyers wealthy, and most lawyers don't know how to use them. There are assistants that can be used to help organize your schedule, and we'll talk about that toward the end. So there's a lot of assets inside the firm. But now let's look at the bucket of people outside the firm. Of course, you've got your current clients. And if you're in the kind of practice where you can get recurring work from the same clients, that's gold. We try to do that. Sometimes we forget to do it as much as we should, but most lawyers have a decent focus in this area. But then there's the world of the potential clients. So let's say that I'm an employment lawyer, and in my region, there are maybe 40 to 50 companies that would fit my profile of the kind of people that I want to meet. HR directors, HR managers, but I only know 2 or 3 of them. So then the game is, you've got 30 to 40 new friends to make. How do you get out there? And we'll share some tools for doing that in a bit. But to build that network of potential clients so that they get to know you. I think, as Hugo referred to at the beginning about reputation, I often look at this as fame. We've got to get famous in front of the right people. And so we've got to come up with techniques, but first we have to identify these networks. Then, if you're in the kind of practice where you might be able to get work from clients that you worked with, so often the work is done, everybody goes their separate ways, and the lawyers forget to stay in touch with their former clients.
Yeah.
And I often hear the mindset of, oh, they work with me, they know me, if they need me, they'll call. Well, there are a lot of other lawyers they might have met in the interim that have made a better impression. So the game here is to never let the echo of you die, so that you've got ways to be able to stay top of mind, which we will get to be able to stay top of mind with your whole network in here, including, of course, former clients.
I could add a note to that
Please.
as well,
Yes.
David, because I think the former client pipeline is oftentimes mistakenly attributed only to like corporate clients.
Yes.
And I couldn't disagree more. Like, one of the things we tell members in our program is, great, you signed the case, awesome. We've done the hard work. Now the harder work is keeping you top of mind for their loved ones for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
And so just want attorneys to know, especially we work with a lot of solos, either just starting their own firms or defecting from a firm, starting their own firm after years in business. It's not, the repeat business doesn't just come from the same clientele. It comes from their networking, and you have to do the work. I'm sure you're going to get into the how we get them to be aware of it, but I just want folks watching to know that this isn't just a corporate attorney concept.
No, it makes sense. And actually, the next bucket that I just popped up about referrals can go back to what you just talked about, because your former clients can become your referral sources. And so again, depending upon your practice, that's why you want to keep the echo of you alive to all of these networks, because you never know who they're going to tell. Then you've got friends and family. And so, they may not be, one of the jokes is, who here has ever done work for friends and family? And who here vows never again to do work for friends and family? It can be a frustrating game, but they could be helpful referral sources and help get you known by the people that might need your services. So we have to constantly keep reminding our network of what it is we do and the value that we provide. The media, this goes back to the fame game. And Hugo, I'm sure you work with this a lot. There are so many resources out there that have a blank page or a blank screen every day. They need stuff. They need you. They need your thought leadership. And so some of the most effective rainmakers I know are very good at getting themselves out and being, top of mind to the different media sources who are looking for quotes. They're looking for an article, whatever is going on. So you can find those networks. If you're in a firm of any size, this alumni concept goes not just alumni of schools, but alumni of your own firm. And so again, if you're at a firm of size, people have left, there could be referral sources there. And then, of course, people you went to high school with, college with, law school with, anything else that you've done. I remember there was one lawyer who he relocated to work on the West Coast, but he went to law school on the East Coast. And there was a small alumni group on the West Coast. So our strategy was for him to re-engage with the alumni group and to do things with them so he would get noticed within that group. One of the things he suggested was to create an alumni directory. And he said, for example, I do estate litigation and blah, 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 blah. Within a week, he got a referral from the network. So it's tapping into these different buckets of people that you have to make sure they know what you do. Keeping on going. Sometimes opponents refer work to lawyers. They, either the client themselves, the lawyer is conflicted out. They need somebody. You never know. But I've seen it enough that it's worth keeping in touch with, especially if you're doing litigation and maybe your local counsel. There's just lots of ways to play this. Passions and hobbies. If there are things you like to do outside of being a lawyer, you meet people, you talk to them, you build rapport with them, you let them know what you do, you try to help them in any way that you can. And again, we'll go into that a little bit more deeply. But these are networks. I remember one guy in Calgary, and he was a little league coach. Now put Calgary and Little League together, you get a really short season. So he said to the parents, we have a short season here. And if anything comes up with your child, I may not notice it right away. So, and he gave out his card. Please, I want you to call. I'm always available. I love these kids and I want to make sure everything goes well. And he said over his career, he's never pitched for the work, but because of building this rapport with the families, he's gotten tons of referrals. And then maybe you're on a board, organizations, these are other networks to be able to work with. Now the game here, if you're on a board or organization or whatever, I often see that, yes, I'm on this board, there's 20 people, but I've never gotten work from it. One of the games to play is to cherry pick who's important, who might be a good prospective client, and try to find a reason to get some one-on-one time with them. That's where the relationship is developed. So you might know you're a lawyer in the full group setting. What I've actually seen that's also helpful is to be a lawyer for the group if your practice allows for that. That's a way where you can audition your services. You've seen that, Hugo?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think like the umbrella here is you have to make the connection, but you also got to give something. Like let's be candid about it. You got to give something of value. You can't waste someone's time just sending out business cards and handing out business cards at Little League games, right? It's like you have to demonstrate that you're of value to the community in one way or another.
Absolutely. And there's a book that I often reference called Giftology. And it's the art of giving gifts to be able to build relationships. And there's a phrase that I take from there that I love. And the author says, you want to become a giverpreneur. You're in the business of giving. And the more that you give, the more people have that reciprocity gene activated, and they're going to want to give back to you. I mean,
it's funny that you mentioned that, David, because I think it was at a Laker game like a year ago, and I saw an attorney that's pretty prominent out here in LA, and I ran into him, just said hi because we run into each other a few times. And throughout that 5-minute interaction, he had like 10 people come up to him asking for selfies because he's one of those guys. Not a billboard guy, ironically, but pretty well known in the space. And I asked him what's creating all this attention, this fame, as you mentioned. And he said I think it's a lot of the charity work. And I thought that was pretty that was something I'd never heard in like the 8 years that I've done this. An attorney attribute a lot of their success to being in the community. But then on the flip side, he said, well, actually, I don't know. And I thought that was even more compelling because he's doing all these things that you're mentioning. He's talking to all of his Trojan alumni. He has an aggressive outreach effort to former clients. He has an amazing customer service for his current clientele. He plays tennis. He plays basketball in Venice. So he's out all the time. This guy is never at home. He's always on the news. And I'm just like, oh, it's that. So his answer was, I'm doing everything. I'm just being myself in these networks. I'm making people aware that I am of service to them. I am of value. He's not just showing up to a tennis game without some degree of intention of creating some business development. And so do you think that's what's really required? Do you think that there needs to be that hat always worn or an awareness in every kind of situation that you're in, that like, if you really want to grow the firm, if you really want to grow your fame, you really have to be mindful of maximizing every opportunity out there?
I mean, it's interesting because if you blend those two, because I could feel the visceral reaction of some of your audience going, oh my God, I've got to be selling every moment. But if you're aware every moment, that's a different thing. If you are in service every moment, that's a different thing. There's the old phrase ABC, the Glenn Ross, always be closing. And I change it to always be curious. And so if you're out there and you're asking questions and you care about people, what are people going to do naturally? Oh, well, tell me a little about you. What do you do? And you're reeling and you're pulling them in by showing your curiosity and caring deeply. I mean, this is what people would say about someone like Bill Clinton, that he was just so great. He'd remember your name. He'd ask you questions. I mean, this is it's interesting. It's a multi-level question, right? Because you also started it with, and he's doing so many different things. And so, yes, doing one thing, that may work. Doing two things, more than likely it'll work better. Now, I can't say do everything because nobody has the time to do everything. But the more that you can do that fits your strengths, that you have the time for, that is passionate for you, so you're going to enjoy doing it, that's the win-win of client relationship development. And there was a quote from, I think it was, maybe it was David Ogilvy, famous advertising guy. 50% of marketing works, 50% doesn't, but we just don't know which it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the quote. No. I think the main takeaway here is if you don't think you're well known enough, you're probably right. And there's enough channels here to start with just one to improve on. So David, that's excellent. So why don't we get into amplifiers? Because we know how important it is to get your name out there. But what are, like, now tactically, we got all these folks to address. What do we do now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tools to be able to amplify yourself out into the world. And so most of you probably have certain publications, depending on your practice, that would welcome something from you. So find a way to do that. There could be, again, depending on your practice, if you are marketing to organizations, maybe they have an internal publication that you could write for. But there's usually some trade, industry, community type of a publication that would take this. You could also publish your own stuff. There are also different organizations. So go back to your story, Hugo, about charitable organizations. That's one thing. There could be trade organizations. If you're looking to get referrals from other lawyers, then the bar associations are good. I bring that up because very often lawyers will say, yeah, I'm a member of the bar, I go to these meetings, but then the next question, are these your clients or referral sources? No, I'm there, to kind of just mingle. I should be known by the others in the bar. Okay, but it's a slow path, a very slow path to getting the kind of fame in front of decision makers. So just don't think by going to your bar group, unless they're really good resources for you, that it's going to check that box. Speaking is always great. I like speaking in a way more than publications because, first of all, publications are great fodder to create the content for speaking. But the beauty of speaking is that you are now auditioning. When you're writing, people can't get a sense of you, the relationship, the kind of person they would work with. But speaking, again, you're on that stage and they could say, this person turns me off, no, or that's the kind of energy, that's the kind of personality, I'm impressed. So, also when I go to events, I usually recommend myself and for clients that I work with is if you're going to go to a conference, see if you can get a speaking slot. See if you can get that fame slot. It just elevates you from being like everybody else who's out there. I mean, if you're an intellectual property lawyer and you're going to the INTA conference where there's thousands of lawyers, you need to find ways to stand out. Videos and podcasts. So an example of what this is, it gets a chance, again, you create your own little world where you produce and curate the information you want. You can control how it looks. You can interview people. So the beauty of podcasts is that it gives you cold calling rights, so to speak, to be able to reach out to people you'd like to meet, to interview them. It's a great way to build some brand new relationships with people that you're targeting. And of course, it's got all the tail end of social media attached to it, that it goes online, search engine optimization, all of that. Social media, that's Hugo's world, but there are so many ways to continually get your name out over and over, because when people start doing, a Google search, if you're not populating stuff online, you're not going to show up. So you need a team like Hugo's and others that can understand how to play this game, how to position you right, and how to create content so that you are constantly seen. Because again, I go back to this word of echo. You have an echo of you that will die if you don't keep re-amplifying it. Now we talked about the media placement, a little too fast. So there's lots of different ways to be able to get your message out in front of people. So it's not just a one-on-one thing, but you can really go one to many.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you have to recognize your audience, which is the last slide, which is, your channels. and now you need to speak to them through, like, let's call them credible channels, minus like social media, because it's like your own personal brand. But I want to remind attorneys that you don't need a $9,000, you know, PR publicist to do this for you. Like, I mean, we do it ourselves. We find our own podcast appearances, our own magazine outlet, like opportunities, like writing opportunities, speaking opportunities at conference. Get a virtual assistant. I mean, that I keep going back to this on almost every, you know, recording that we have of this, is there is so much low-hanging fruit to be amplified as long as you have the right virtual assistant finding these opportunities for you, because it is a research, time-intensive, pretty laborious task to find out which, you know, attorney outlets, which local magazines, which podcasts are relevant to your market, to your audience. So get a virtual assistant, because this, you know, having experience, we have a virtual assistant right now just finding these amplifiers. It takes them 20 hours a week to send out, you know, these intro emails, and to set up those digital handshakes, and to set up sponsor dollars and deploy sponsor dollars. It takes an effort. So if that's too large, if that feels too intensive for you, just start with one. You know, start with, you know, asking someone to join their podcast. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit. More often than not, people will say yes to have you join them. So this is great, David. So let's get into top of mind. So one challenge I often hear is after meeting a potential client or referral source, it's hard to come up with ways to stay in touch and keep in touch with them that feels authentic, you know, comfortable, welcome. So what approaches do you have for staying top of mind? Let's not just for your current clients, but for everyone that you
Absolutely. So going to this next slide, we start with this image. And this image is the brain of the people or person that you want to be top of mind with. You want to be there. When they think, I need a lawyer, how do you get yourself to pop up? And this goes back to the giftology thing, which is, what are the gifts? What are the things you could do for people to give them value? So let's go through some specific examples. Again, this can be very practice specific. I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas in here. One, if your practice lends itself to it, to go visit on site. Now, this could be for a corporate client. If you're estate planning, do you visit the house? You know, there's just so many different ways to be able to see people in their natural habitat, so to speak. And the beauty of this is there's often what I call the by the way factor. You're there, you're talking about this and that, and they go, you know, by the way, I have this other thing. And it's because you're there in their world with all of their issues that are popping up. It makes them think about all the different areas that are there. The other thing, again, if you're working with clients that do any kind of planning, whether it's a corporate client, individual families, whatever it might be, to join clients when they're having their own internal brainstorming and planning sessions. Now, again, depends on your practice if this works. And this is part of this whole thing, is that I'll share some. You might go, these don't apply to me, others do, or you could extrapolate an idea that works for you. But over and over, I've seen lawyers volunteer to come in when a group is having their own internal planning, and they walk out with 2 or 3 new matters they wouldn't have had otherwise. Providing some kind of a training. This is one of the top techniques to be able to audition for clients. So it could be, you know, I was just coaching somebody this morning about this. It could be a 1-hour program. It could be a 15-minute program. Right. Actually, I'm more of a fan of let's do 4 15-minute programs over a year than one 1-hour program in a year. Because then you can keep your echo alive. And then there's more of a chance that maybe today there was nothing, but in 4 months you show up again. Oh, by the way. So, you know, interesting to take a look at techniques on how to break these things out.
And you can contextualize the broken up cadence to like the news. Like I would imagine your corporate lawyer attorneys are thinking about, you know, tariff exposure, you know, immigration attorneys should be talking about the changing landscape in this current administration. In California, injury policy limits are doubling, you know, and so that might be something. So contextualizing the things that are going on today makes it a little more relevant if you break up those cadences, to your point, over the course of the year, instead of just having this singular event, having these ongoing trainings that are relevant to today.
And what it does is that, as you know, it gives the 4 touches over a year. It also is, here's the hot news. I have a reason to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, another subtle piece of the 15 minutes versus an hour game, is that people have a better chance of having 15 minutes to give you than they would an hour.
Yeah.
And so, but you offer it to them, because maybe if they're large enough and they want to offer training to a group of people and they blocked out an hour, you got the hour. But you let them know, if you've got 15 minutes, we can do it. An hour, you just let us know. And we've got these very discrete hot issues. Now, building on what you were talking about, I kind of break it out that there's 2 types of content. There's the hot issue, hot news content, and then there's evergreen stuff. Doesn't matter what's happening in the news. So to have in your back pocket a bunch of evergreen stuff so that you can put that out in a cadence, but then when something comes up that's hot, boom, you push it out. So you've got all your different options.
Love that.
The next one we had here, making introductions. You know, some of the best rainmakers I know are, as one person called himself, I'm a concierge. People come to me and I find answers for them. I introduce them around. I help them get this, I get that. People know to come to me for things. So putting people together is very, very powerful. Going to conferences. And if you could take leadership positions in these conferences, it gives you great visibility. So again, if that's your kind of practice and a conference has hot targets, prospects, referral sources, how can you elevate yourself? Take a leadership position. Leadership position also gives you contact rights, so to speak. Today, talking to a fellow who joined a group in his state, biggest trade group in the state, and he's on the membership committee. And his job is to reach out to 5 to 10 former members every week to try to invite them back. I mean, this is gold. He's got the imprimatur of this organization behind him, giving him permission to reach out to these great high-level business people. It's a beautiful technique.
David, would you say that the leadership opportunities only become more realistic if you have the amplifiers?
It certainly helps. I mean, they all come together, because if you've got some brand and they go, oh, you, sure, we have you, instead of, you?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a really, I mean, it just seems like a really key aspect of leadership opportunities, that if you're not known even a little bit, it's not happening.
It's, you know, this all goes to personal branding. It's a whole nother topic, a whole nother module in the program. But this whole idea of personal branding, who you are, how you show up, how you stand out compared to other people, makes all the difference in the world. I mean, the fact, let's just pull back the curtain slightly, right? We'll break the fourth wall, so to speak. And just your introduction of me with my background, my credentials, what I've accomplished in my career, perhaps makes the listener want to listen to me a little bit more closely than, here's a guy we brought off the street. Yeah, he teaches business development, and here's what he has to say. I still provide the same content, but the context of where it's coming from is completely different. So building that brand is just, it's so subtle. There's a whole thing about your bio that we could go into. But, you know, to me, bios are pretty generic and basic and boring, and you could take your name out and put in somebody else's and nobody would know the difference.
Yep.
So that's a whole thing in and of itself. All right. Joining and starting a group. This fellow I talked to today, he actually started a group of people in his industry, clients in his state. He just got 35 people to show up to his meeting last week. And he said, driving home 45 minutes, I got 2 phone calls from people that want to work for me. Now, this didn't just happen magically. He's been curating this over time, but because he's the person that's been putting it together, he's been making introductions. They do it socially, they do educational stuff. he has positioned himself to be a go-to person in this area.
Right.
So joining groups that already exist, starting your own, just great techniques. Here's another one. Ask people if they want to co-present with you. Gives you an opportunity to reach out to just about anybody you want, because you're not calling to ask for work. And this goes back, Hugo, to what you talked about. How can you stay top of mind in ways that are comfortable and elegant to you and to the person you're reaching out to? So co-authoring, co-presenting, these are great techniques. I know some lawyers that are writing, the chapter for the Bar Association book, and they use it to interview clients to get their thoughts.
Yeah.
Another lawyer, an antitrust lawyer, he has a sort of point of view on antitrust that's a little bit different. And so we worked it so that he was able to get Forbes articles. And so he would write these Forbes articles, and within 2 years, he's going to collect this information and turn it into a book. So, and he's using each article as an excuse to reach out to prospects and so on to get their thoughts on his next article. So it's this creative way of staying top of mind, and it works on 2 levels, right? One is I target Hugo and JC and I interview them, but then it gets pushed out through an amplifier. So I get the micro hit and I get the macro hit. Current events. So I have a lot of lawyers that have Google alerts set up for certain clients. Something shows up, they look at it, they go, all right, I can come up with a reason to reach out based on that, and they reach out. And every once in a while, they get work from it. Social events, of course, our lawyers are great, going to Lakers games and whatever. One interesting angle here is, again, if your client base works this way, I've heard clients say, yes, I know you're supposed to schmooze us and take us out and wine and dine, but we just want to go home and be with our families. You probably do too. So what I've seen some lawyers do is create family-friendly events where on a Saturday, so it's 2 examples. One, there was a law firm that every time a new Harry Potter movie opened up, they would rent out the theater and invite clients and their families.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Another one, when the circus came to town, they would rent out the circus and so on. Now, it doesn't have to be that big and grandiose. It could be a smaller thing. But if you can invite clients with their families, everybody's pretty tired. And everybody's a little, I won't say burned out, but do they have the next great idea of what to do to make their family happy? So if you could do something where they're with their family and with you, boy, you're checking off great boxes and showing up in ways other lawyers aren't. Another thing, it could be you've got a new way of doing something. You've learned something from another client. You can use that as an excuse to reach out. And then here's one of my favorites, which is to check in with a client and that you've got a checklist in your practice area. And just like anybody who's gone to a doctor, like especially a general practitioner, and they give you those 5 pages, you got to check off 1,000 things. We should be doing the same thing for our clients. They need counsel. I mean, the old days, we had the business card that would say attorney and counselor at law. If you can sit down with clients and go through a checklist of things, you might find other things they need from you or other people you could refer work to, and however you work that. And then the last thing here is stuff we've talked about with other kinds of amplifiers. Right. Writing, alerts, blogs, putting out all these things, PR. There's just so many tools at your disposal. And part of what this is to give you a list like this so that you can look and go, those don't work, but that might be something that I can work with.
That's great.
So these are some great ideas for you.
This is excellent, David. So let's get into the last component here of the framework. It's the guarantee reminder slide. So a lot of attorneys I talk to recognize the importance of just marketing in general, and more specifically like personal business development, but they oftentimes say, I don't have time, or I don't know how to create these habits. I don't have an accountability system. What do you recommend to attorneys to be reminded of this? Yes. Because it's not just, it's their job to lawyer, but at the same time, it's also their job to do exactly everything you're talking about here.
Yeah, and usually it's something that's lower on the scale, so we need to wrap some exoskeletal systems around us. So I'm going to go quickly to give you some so that whoever's listening, if you find something that works for you, great. One, can you set a goal for yourself? with measures. Like I want to try to set up 2 meetings a week. I want to reach out to 1 referral person a week. I want to write 1 article or whatever. Set a goal, and then have a great contact list, because there's something that I call the memory matrix, where you basically create a list of everybody who's important to you, and then you go months of the year across, and this way you can look to see when you have been in touch with people. We forget about people who are important to us. Then put it on the calendar, and find a time that works for you that won't slip. Maybe it's Monday from 9 to 9:15. Maybe it's Saturday morning before the kids are awake. Whatever works, put it on your calendar. And then again, put it in at a specific time so you actually see it and it pops up for you. Then there's another level that you could wrap up on you, because all of this is you, but can you get what I call watchers, like a buddy system? Is there somebody else who it could be another lawyer in your firm, another lawyer a spouse or significant other, a friend, that you hold each other, to hold each other accountable on a certain cadence. Maybe, again, if you're at a firm of any size, it could be a group. Maybe your practice assistant or your virtual assistant is somebody that can hold you accountable to these things. I remember one lawyer had his assistant try to schedule 2 lunches a week for him. And this worked beautifully well. And they worked together on it. And it actually was fun for the assistant to do, because it was nice to be doing the human stuff instead of just always pushing paper. And then if you're in a firm that's large enough, or you've got outside resources, have your marketing and BD team be able to help you so they can remind you. So the top row, systems you can put in place. The bottom row, a series of watchers to hold you accountable. That's a way to be able to try to guarantee making this work.
I love that. I mean, I know we just scratched the surface of tons of other workflows and frameworks that you built at Lawyer Book Builder. So if attorneys want to be in touch with you for your services, consulting, some of your courses, we like to give attorneys a direct line to our guests. So what's the direct line to you, David?
Yeah, I think the easiest way would be david@lawyerbookbuilder.com. That's the easiest way. I live in Europe, so time zones could be challenging with phone calls. So this way we can go by email, and I'm happy to brainstorm with anybody about any of these elements of what this is about.
Amazing, amazing. And so David, what's the most common situation or kind of stage in an attorney's career where they end up reaching out to you?
Yeah, it's I laugh because it's as soon as they get hungry. And it depends, of course, it depends where you are, what kind of firm you're in. In some very large firms, it's often after they become partner and that first year or two, and they're no longer being fed by the other partners, and they've got to go and build their own book. If you're a solo practitioner, you got to do it from day one. Yeah. If you're in smaller firms, maybe first few years as an associate, you're getting your legs wet to learn, but the firm is still saying, you got to start building your network. And, you guys get out there and get known by people and start thinking about areas that you want to not quite specialize in, but a place you want to get known and become famous. What groups should you be with? So again, I kind of go with the hunger versus a date and time.
Yeah, and uniquely, where everyone's trying to find these AI shortcuts, this is definitely an area that's not going to have any AI shortcuts. And I think the cream will rise, the ones that do the human work, the interfacing with the community. I think those attorneys will be the ultimate rainmakers in the long term. So David, thank you so much for joining us today. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us, and to our entire team who produced this great event. Thank you very much. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you. Bye.